Good morning. I'd like to call to order the June 8th Vision Zero Advisory Committee meeting. Staff, if you could please call roll so that we can establish quorum.
At this time, I am only asking those VZAC members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. I want to remind you to please unmute your microphone by pushing the button on the base prior to responding. Alternates, please also state your name if you're attending on behalf of a VZAC representative. Bruce Rosenzweig.
Here. Nell Chapman, alternate.
Thank you. Craig Pinder.
Here, alternate Mosey Abdulrahmanov.
Thank you. Ted Goodenough. I believe he's attending online, so we'll get to him in just a moment. Joan Oliva.
Here.
Joanne Scaria.
Here.
Fadi Nassar.
Neil for Fadi.
JC Berry. David Willock.
Here.
Jean Matthews.
Here.
Bruce Guyton. Michael Owens. Christian Santa Gonzalez.
Here.
Jermaine Swaby. Eliza Hansen.
Here.
Amy Alvarez. Tracy Phelps.
Here.
Stephanie Thoburn.
Here.
And Wabette Hay is absent.
Okay. Are there any additional modifications to the agenda? We have quorum? Oh, I see JC just came in.
And we do have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay, and JC just walked in.
Thank you.
Perfect. So we have quorum and I see Melissa, you're working the mic today, so thank you. Are there any additional modifications to the agenda? Any?
No, Madam Chair.
Is
Okay. The following members are requesting VZAC permission to participate remotely. Michael Owens due to ongoing staffing shortages at the Palm Beach County School District and Ted Goodenough due to transportation connection issues.
does any of the VZAC members have any issues with the Mr. Goodenough and Mr. Owens attending remotely? Seeing none, both of you are approved to participate remotely. Would you please note their attendance in the minutes? Thanks. Okay. So the next item is the liaison report, and Valentina Facus will be going over that with us.
First, we just have to make sure we approve the minutes from the
Oh.
last meeting.
I didn't turn the page over. That's why. Thank you. Anybody doesn't know. Okay. Motion to approve the minutes from May 4th, 2023. Are there any changes? Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a note of a correction for the attendance of the April 6th meeting. Joan Oliva had an excused absence.
Okay. Are there any other changes? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
Motion.
David Willock motioned and Joanne Joan second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? The motion passes and we'll move on to the next item. The minutes are approved. General public comments. And there's instructions on how to provide public comments that are included in the agenda. Staff have any general comments been received?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is comments from the board and the chair. And we were having a great discussion earlier about Senate Bill 102, which is the Live Local. Everybody's talking about it. If you don't know about it, I suggest everybody look at it. But for us, it's, from a planning standpoint, I think it from a philosophical planning standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense for redevelopment in urban services areas when you have commercial areas and that are at a lower level of service and need redevelopment. But in the town, for example, we have green fields that are being eyed for use, and they're industrial and they're part of our bioscience research overlay area. So, I think from a board standpoint, what are the issues that come up related, unintended consequences that can come up related to the preemption of local home rule, allow not, not, and please, I'm a big supporter of workforce housing. But having the careful consideration and what that does to the livability of places, changes that we have planned for our town for, in this case, for over 20 years, our lands are part of the bioscience overlay area. If it was in a commercial area, that needed redevelopment, and I think that makes a good sense in terms of evolution of a city. But I just, I thought that it's such an important issue, and we're starting to get developers coming who just want to take advantage of that rule. So if anybody else has, I know we were all talking on this side, and I just thought it was so compelling that it was an important thing to talk about, because I think, on one hand, having residential included and mixed use in a city is a good thing. But, I just wanted to talk about what are the other things that we don't intend.
And I believe that's a bill that also has the contingent that if you're within a mile of a skyscraper, you can put in high density housing too. And I'm thinking about the impact of places that have skyscrapers like Sunrise. I mean, kind of sticking out in the middle of nowhere. And all of a sudden that makes the surrounding 1 mile radius susceptible to high density housing without planning or zoning really even being able to affect it. So I completely understand what you're saying, and I agree with 100%. I mean, we need workforce housing, but to force it in places that we protected like that, I completely agree.
Has anybody gotten any developers knocking on their door yet that they could share any? I mean, I think in terms of, I don't think it's necessarily this discussion in depth here, but I think as a group representing our towns, our cities, if we can, if something comes up, let's talk about it that we can share. So, Joan.
Thank you. I just, I wanted to look at it a little differently. In Lake Worth Beach, obviously, we're a very small town. So you talk about 1 mile radius, you're talking about most of the town that suddenly now can have the same amount of density and height as a TOD area. And without, I think, a lot of thought about what is the impact on the environment, and what is the impact for people walking or biking, which, directly affects us here. I do think, however, that, there's kind of two things to really think about. One is, what is the value of those units in comparison to what they're going to cost the city as far as, providing services to them if they do go off the tax roll, or at least get a portion of their fees taken off. And then also, maybe a positive would be that it would be, with the increased density and increased traffic, maybe it kind of forces more cities to look into some kind of public transportation, and maybe, between the parking garages that I'm guessing will probably go with a lot of these places, there'll be more places to park, and hopefully more people will get out and start walking and biking, which just means, the job of the TPA actually gets harder.
And I see Mr. Goodenough is on the line as well.
Yes, Ted, if you, I saw you had your hand raised, so if you'd like to go ahead and make a comment.
I didn't have a comment about this subject, but I do agree that we need to be concerned with how many people we're plugging into what seems to be getting smaller and smaller available spaces. It's not going to help the ecology, and we're going to put more vehicles on the road. And then if we try and take them off the road and put them on bike paths and shared use paths, we're just going to end up with more of a mess than we currently have. What I was going to comment about is my monthly, hey, if you're presenting today, please remember, not everyone can see what you're presenting. Please describe any graphics you have, and especially tables. Really hard to follow a table when you have no idea what's in it. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goodenough. Jean?
I do the zoning review for Parks and Rec and along with Daniel Duenas. And we're seeing projects come in, little infill projects on an acre of land with like 23 units an acre, and it really breaks down the quality of life and the amount of recreation they can provide on such a small site with such high density units. And the other thing we're seeing a lot of, and I know David knows this, a lot of these apartment complexes are coming in with like 500 and 600 units, and then they're asking for parking waivers to reduce their parking requirement by over 100 spaces. Well, that directly affects our committee, and the fact that, you know what, if all of a sudden you know, with the price of rents, if you have two people that are both working, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, they're going to have 2 cars, but there's only 1 spot, and then there's very few guest spots. We're going to see more people shifting away. If they want to live there, they're going to have to figure out ways to live with less cars.
Moisey,
Yes.
I thought I saw your card. Oh, I'm sorry, Joanne.
That's okay. I just wanted to report that I think a lot of the provisions in the bill are still a little unclear. So, we had one meeting with a developer that was interested in utilizing it. I don't think their plan will work because it does say that all of the other zoning regulations and other regulations in the city still apply. And then there's an interesting provision about if the city designates less than 20% of industrial and commercial, which some of our suburban areas, I believe, do, that it must be a mixed use project. So I thought that was interesting. I'm really interested to see how this is going to be received and be proposed by the private sector.
I think there's more to think about, and good, bad, and, especially for this board and walkability and so just, as we move forward, it'd be good to think about it. So I don't want to belabor that, but it's been bugging me lately. So then now we're on schedule for the VSAC liaison report, right? So Valentina Pacus, if you can give us your report.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to take this opportunity to introduce and welcome 4 new members that will be joining our Vision Zero Advisory Committee. So welcome to Jahaira Malero. She'll be joining us as the alternate for the city of Boca Raton. Jermaine Swaby as the main representative for the city of West Palm Beach. Christian Melendez Barrios for the village of Palm Springs as the alternate. And Claudette de los Santos for the Florida Department of Transportation, although she will be joining us officially as a member once her appointment is approved by the TPA board. So we look forward to receiving all of your input for pedestrian and bicycle safety as it relates to Vision Zero. So welcome. Now on to the liaison report. So as you all may or may not know, last month it was National Bicycle Month, and it was also a bicycle day. I don't remember what day it was, but last month there was a day celebrating Bicycle Day. So in June 15th, it's National Dump the Pump Day to celebrate transit. So if you share a photo of you using transit, you will get $5 for Palmtran. So I encourage everyone to do this between June 10th, June 17th. And you can look at all of the transit options on our website at palmbeachtpa.org/transit. We will also be hosting a series of walk bike safety audits in the month of June. First one is June 9th, this Friday, tomorrow, for Whispering Pines Elementary School. We have invited all of the roadway owners, municipalities, and any other stakeholders to attend. You are all more than welcome to attend, and you can register at our website at palmbeachtpa.org/audits. And then June 16th, I believe that one is for Palm Springs Community Middle School. And then for June 23rd, that one's for Dwight D. Eisenhower Elementary School. And June 30th, that one, we're doing a post-project evaluation for the Glades DDI. So we've invited some people for that. So encourage everyone to register. Next is bicycle-friendly designations. You can apply to be a bicycle-friendly business. The TPA does have a bicycle-friendly designation, so we have gone through the process of doing that application. So if you need any help, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to help. We also have the TPA safety pledges to pledge to be a safe driver and also to pledge to not say accidents, but say it's a crash. So for that, you can visit our website at palmbeachtpa.org/vision0. Next, the United States Department of Transportation actually has a grant navigator tool, which is really cool for municipalities and just local governments that may have trouble trying to find grants. The U.S. Department of Transportation created this tool to make it easier for everyone to try to find grants. So for that, you can visit transportation.org. .gov/navigator. Next, the TPA is conducting a transit survey. So we would greatly appreciate everyone's feedback on transit for Palm Beach County. And to access that survey, you can go to our website, palmbeachtpa.org/transit survey. And similarly, for Florida Bicycle Month, we did a bicycle survey. And up on the screen here, we have the results for that survey. We did a survey in Spanish and another survey in English with a total of 195 respondents. And it's really interesting because out of those 195 respondents, only 3 of them said that they feel safe riding a bicycle in Palm Beach County. So that's very telling. And only 28% of those 195 respondents ride their bicycle as a mode of commuting, for an alternate mode of transportation. So we need to improve. That's why we're all here in this committee. So just wanted to share this. So that concludes my liaison report.
Thanks, Valentina. I'm going to fill out the TPA transit report. Everyone here should do so as part of your VSAC requirements. I think it's important to get that information and survey and push it out to people in your at your municipality. So the next item is the tip amendment number 5 to the TPA's fiscal year 2023-2027. And Andrew Euler is going to present this.
And Madam Chair, I would like to note for the record that Bruce Guyton has joined the meeting.
Welcome, Mr. Guyton. You're the only Bruce today, right? Yeah. Okay, so I can call you Bruce.
All right, good morning, everyone. So the first 2 items today are action items regarding the Transportation Improvement Program. The first one is for our current TIP, that is fiscal year 23 to 27. And then the next action item is going to be on our upcoming tip, which is 24 to 28. So this is amendment number 5. And as a reminder, the amendment is only dealing with the project that is listed in the amendment. So this is only dealing with one project, the Ermine River Bridge. Maybe you can just move for me. Okay, thanks. So this one only really impacts one project. This triggers amendment because it's a scope change. They added a lot of items to the scope based on requests from a few other agencies, and it increased the cost substantially for this project. So this is for the US 1 bridge over the Ermine River. This is in North Palm Beach, going into Lake Park. This is just north of North Lake Boulevard. And what this amendment does is it adds $10.3 million to the construction cost. So it's going from around 10.8 million that's currently listed in the tip to 21 million, so roughly doubling. And it moves the construction phase from our current fiscal year of 23 to fiscal year 2024. And then on the screen, we're listing the different phases and the current funds in the tip for those phases, and then what is proposed. Some of the main highlights for this one include utility phase that's been added of $3.5 million. The right-of-way has increased from 850,000 to 3.6 million. And then construction has increased from 9.9 to 13.8 million. So in total, it's a $10.3 million increase. And then in the backup material, this is a request from FDOT for this product, but it provided more understanding about why this request is needed. And I'll highlight a few main points of that. There has been increases in the unit prices of all materials. So construction costs have gone up, throughout all projects. So that's the first one. Another main point is that there's additional scope items that were requested from 2 agencies, both the South Florida Water Management District and then the Village of North Palm Beach. The South Florida Water Management District requesting more dredging of the C-17 canal to dramatically improve flood control. And that also resulted in the need for additional riprap along the sides of that canal. So that's a big increase. And then second one is the Village of North Palm Beach requested FDOT to temporarily modify the signing and pavement markings during this project. So those are 2 requests from locals that were also added to this project. And that's all I have for you on that summary.
Are there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Do we have any board comments, committee member comments on this item? David?
Yesterday during TAC, they were asking about the utility relocation. And that looks like it's represented by $3.5 million.
Correct. RRU.
So I thought the explanation yesterday was that it was done, it's going to be done primarily to speed up the project. Are there any additional benefits like in the long run?
That's a good question. I'd have to ask the project manager. So what you heard yesterday from the project manager listening in is.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about it after the fact and we're like, that kind of seems strange. $3.5 million just to relocate utilities.
So what was discussed was why is such a large utility cost there, and why was it added as a phase? And so there's utility lines on the east side of the roadway or the bridge, and they're moving those to the west side. And for some reason, that also allows them, if they do it now, to have a shorter construction window. Right? That's sort of like the reason they gave yesterday on the reason for this, but.
Okay, so
that's
just
a good question, though.
relocating it to the other side of the bridge and.
Yep, that's all we know as well.
All right. Thank you.
Just one question. This project was postponed from the grants that we were to see. Was that last year? And was this the reason why? Was because the estimate was it needed more money?
For this one specifically, I'm not sure.
I recall that we had an item, and I just remembered this was that we had something in front of us, and then they pulled out at the last minute and said, we're not going to be submitting that. So, I mean, maybe my memories.
I don't know if it was related to this Urban River Bridge project.
Okay. All right.
This was that product that was originally had a temporary quick fix on it. It had a partial collapse a few years ago, I think for part of the walls, pedestrian sidewalk, and then they're doing long-term fixes now.
Yes. In Jupiter, we understand how a bridge needs replacing instead of fixing. Because the US one bridge is closed now for a long time. And it all goes to our other areas in town. So anyways, are there any more comments or, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just curious why the relocation of the utility wasn't factored in initially, if it was already a line that was run there. Was there changes to the dimension of the bridge? And so that's why relocation is happening now and it wasn't considered.
Right. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer for that, about why specifically it's factored in now and not before. My assumption is that it was, based on the conversations with the locals, they must have figured out that they moved it now, that it was more beneficial. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
But these are good questions. I can follow up with the manager on.
Just on the follow-up on the utilities, we found that just for undergrounding utilities, it's about $300 to $400 per linear foot now. Yeah. A linear foot to underground utilities. So, and recently, FP&L just hardened all of our lines. So, if you have a concrete poles with a nice tight line on it, that's a lot more expensive than the $300 to $400, which was on the wooden poles. So I can see why that number is really big, just because we've been dealing with them.
Yeah, I really just brought it up because I was hoping there were additional benefits that went along with the relocation. I mean, for $3.5 million, you kind of hope, we're getting our money's worth.
Agreed. Are there any more comments on this amendment? So, if we don't have any more discussion, do I have a motion?
A motion to, go ahead.
I'll second.
Joe, is it Joan? Okay, and David is the second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all in favor. There, everybody's on board on that one. So then the next item is our draft 2024 to 2028 Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the TIP, and Andrew's still up there. He's going to be presenting this item.
So this is the second reading of this next document. This is the fiscal year 24 to 28 Transportation Improvement Program. We'll begin operating under this one by the federal fiscal year of October 1st. And this was seen last month. And so that was a longer presentation. This is a very similar presentation to last month, just shortened up. We only have a few slides to show you. So what is the Transportation Improvement Program? This is a list of products by phase and funding source over the next 5 years. It deals with the federal and state funding that comes to our county. Each metropolitan planning organization in the state and also the country has a transportation improvement program. Our next 5 years are going to be 2024 through 2028, and we're currently operating in our current fiscal year of 23 in our current TIP. It's a long process to get to this point of a TIP adoption, and it really starts well over a year ago. So with product development, that includes taking products from the long range transportation plan. That's our 2045 plan, so it has line items in there. It also takes products from submittals to us by locals that you all prioritize with our other committees, and then finally the governing board. And those are through our state road modifications, our local initiatives and transportation alternatives. So that previous list of priority products was in July of 2022. With that list, FDOT updates all their cost estimates within their current work program, has new revenue projections, and they balance that all out and then present that to us. And that's what forms our transportation improvement program. So consistent with both with the state. And so we saw it last month for the first time, and this is the second reading for adoption. Summary of what's in it for Palm Beach County. $3.1 billion in federal and state funding. And then we include other local funding sources as well for reference. The major sections in the document are listed here. The strategic intermodal system as being the bigger one for capacity improvements. We talked about it last time at our last meeting about all those major improvements that are coming in, widenings on the turnpike, and then all those interchanges coming in on I-95. So that's the bulk of what you're seeing for the major investments there, well over $1 billion. And then the next categories are our state road modifications, our local initiatives, and transportation alternatives. Those are the three ones that the TPA prioritizes. And then we also include operations and maintenance and other projects throughout the county. So this is a new slide. There's a lot of details in this table. I'm really just going to read some highlights for this, but we try to track our long-range transportation plan and how well we're achieving those desires that we have in that plan. And this is summarized in the TIP document as well. But in this summary, we include the strategic intermodal system products that are listed in our LRTP. Our major priority products that are listed as line items. So it'd be something like Atlantic Avenue, State Road 7, US 1 projects. And then we have our programs of state road modifications, local initiatives, and transportation alternatives. And then since the adoption of our plan back in 2019, December of 2019, we've prioritized 15 state road projects, 19 local initiatives, and then 15 transportation alternatives. Most of them have been, they're underway, they're in the TIP with construction or are starting their phases. There's a few priorities. So we have 3 priorities for the TPA and the LRTP that have not had any funds in the TIP yet. 1 state road modifications, and then 6 local initiatives. Those are those products from last year. And then all the TA ones right now have been funded. So summary of what it is in this upcoming TIP for the TPA priorities: $235 million invested. Over 100 million, 103 million are going towards roadway capacity. So that's finishing up Atlantic Avenue and State Road 7. Both those products do include pedestrian bicycle facilities. And then we have $84 million of standalone pedestrian bicycle facilities. You all are very familiar with the submittals you get for the transportation alternatives. Very similarly to that, we have a lot of products that come in through the local initiatives that are towards non-motorized transportation. So that's why we see such a large amount going towards ped bike facilities. Then we have Tri-Rail rolling stock, $13 million. That's an investment from the TPA, and also a regional investment with our other partners at Broward and Miami-Dade. And then they also just received a major grant from the federal government to replace 1/3 of the rolling stock. So you'll see a lot of improvements on Tri-Rail coming up here in the next few years. And then there's also lighting, electric buses for Palm Tran, transit shelters, and then traffic signals. And then getting into the highlights of just the 3 priority programs we have. State roads, same updates as last time. State Road 7 showing in the latter part of the TIP, and then the northern section of that, 60th and North Lake, is delayed outside the TIP. Atlantic Avenue is still on schedule for that western portion in 24, and then the other portions are coming in to the east over these next few years as well. After that, we'll be doing the feasibility study for the Oak Tree Boulevard from State Road 7 to downtown West Palm Beach, based on the TPA's previous multimodal corridor study. So they'll be assessing transit alternatives out there. And then there's still the ongoing study of the US 27 connector out in the Glades community. And this is a connector roadway on US 27 and State Road 715. And there's some studies still going on for that. And then our other programs, local initiatives, just main highlights. We've got 3 upcoming ones for fiscal year 2024. One of those is being interesting to note is the electric buses and chargers. So Palm Tran will be rolling those out first time. And then also last priority list, we had an additional 6 priorities that have not been programmed yet. So they are staying at the top of the list this next cycle for priorities. And we'll be looking to fund those hopefully in this next upcoming tip after this one that you're seeing today. And then transportation alternatives, there's 4 upcoming products in fiscal year 2024. And then the 4 new products that were added for fiscal year 2026. So these are the ones that you prioritize and they were funded. And that's all I have for you really for a summary. It's still up on the website. You can see the full document there. There's a map. It's going to be adopted or up for adoption by the governing board at our next meeting this coming next Thursday. And then you'll also see appendices in there, and it has a lot more information, details with public participation, performance measures, and fiscal analysis. That's all I have for you.
Thanks, Andrew. Are there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, David. Okay.
I just had a quick question for Palm Tran. The electric buses and chargers, you're gonna put chargers at like public car chargers or are those just for the buses?
Anybody who's been in public service knows that things are subject to change. But the discussion now is to place them at our locations where the buses are, which are West Palm Beach, Delray, and Belle Glade. In the future, I'm not sure what the discussion would be, if it may be plans to put them on some of the routes. And that is, I would think, a possibility in the future, but initially it would be where the buses are based at.
Okay, but these would be available to the public though to charge cars?
That I'm not sure. I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay, I'm kind of wondering how it would work. Like if you pull up to a bus stop and like go into a charger and then you go somewhere, you're not there to like remove your vehicle. from the charger.
I haven't heard any discussion about the public having access to it at this point,
Okay,
but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It could be above my pay grade. But I have heard no discussion about it being available or those being available to the public.
okay. I was just curious. Okay, thanks.
Logistically, I can see a problem with that. A huge problem. So I don't anticipate it initially or in the future.
Jermaine?
Good morning, everyone. So the city has, made certain comments with regards to the State Road 7 extension and widening and its possible effects on our water catchment and water preserve area. So due to those concerns, I can't support the project as is, not the overall TIP project, but just those specifics.
Understand and consistent.
Yes.
Jean?
Last meeting or a meeting before, we talked about connecting Winding Waters, Dyer, and Solid Waste Authority trails by modifying the Turnpike Bridge to allow a pathway. The Turnpike actually got back to us, FDOT got back and said they would look at it. They understood the plan and what we were looking at, and they were forwarding it to engineer. And if nothing else, there was like a 6-foot sidewalk pathway on the south side of Beeline, which would provide a connection. It's not an ideal connection, but at least they're thinking about it, and they were open to the idea. And Andrew, you were copied on that. So I was pleased that that's on their radar for the design.
Yeah, but we, Gene, thank you for communicating with them as well. You have more information than I do. So, yeah, we submitted everything we have, I guess, for the trail systems and other priorities throughout. So they have a lot of products coming up in the next few years along the Turnpike that you all saw. And so hopefully they can start fitting more of these are considering those in the design. So.
Yeah, because the biggest problem going east-west is getting under the Turnpike and under I-95, because with the interchanges there, it feels very unsafe to get through all those points.
Yeah,
So.
and thank you, Jean, for bringing that up. I think it's important for our board to, bring those types of things up and continually reminding and be consistent with our comments as it relates to providing those comments. So just taking a look at, you know, the documents to see how it affects your communities and, or even areas that you just know about. You know, one of the things when I was looking at the tip, and I keep bugging Andrew about it, was that, and he keeps saying, don't just look at the executive packet that's here with all the projects. Go and look at the full tip document. And so he showed me some of that information. I wanted to share that with you because it's important for us to keep track and for my town, it's important because we want to take a project that's in the tip and we want to expand it and make a priority. And we're doing plans and planning projects and studies on Center Street, which is one of our old areas of the town. And because it's not in the executive summary, I kept bugging Andrew about it, but I encourage everybody to look at the full tip so that you're aware of everything that could possibly impact your community. Because for us, and we had an issue, and it may have been internal, it probably was, but part of one of our major roads, Center Street, was expanded to have a third lane, an interior turn lane, a middle turn lane. And it's one of the bypasses from Indiantown Road, and it was installed without bike lanes. And, and there's a lot of people riding their bikes. So and bad for us to not keep track of that and not know about it. But, now that we know, it's so important because these facilities last for, 20 years. And so we're stuck with a large section because we weren't paying attention as well. So I just want to encourage everybody to look at the full tip document, and I don't have any other comments. Anybody else? Oh, Mr. Goodenough.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to say I can't support shared use paths. And the reason, I'll just give an example. Let's say we have a road that has 30,000 cars that travel along it each day. And we succeed in getting 10% of those people off onto a shared use path. That's 3,000 bicycles added to a path with pedestrians. And I just don't see how that's going to be safe. Honestly, it's just not a wise idea. And I don't think that we're thinking far enough in the future. If we want people out of vehicles and onto paths, let's try and make those safe before we make 20-year mistakes. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Goodenough. Anybody else? Do we have any more comments on the tip? Do we have a motion? Mr. Bruce Guyton. Do I have a second?
Second.
David is the second. And I think maybe we need to roll call on this one, since we're going to have a couple of nays.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so Nellie Chapman.
Okay. Yes.
Moisey,
Yes.
Ted Goodenough,
No.
Joan Oliva,
Yes.
Joanne Scaria,
Yes.
Fadi Nassar.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Neil Wentz. JC Berry,
Yes.
David Willock,
Yes.
Jean Matthews,
Yes.
Bruce Guyton,
Yes.
Michael Owens,
Yes.
Christian Santa Gonzalez,
Yes.
Jermaine Swaby,
No.
Eliza Hanson,
No.
Amy Alvarez, Tracy Phelps,
Yes.
and Stephanie Thoburn.
Yes. Okay, so that passes.
Yeah. Madam Chair, we do typically in our backup, we show the for and against for the board. And so we have, what is it, 3 no's, looks like. And so we've heard Mr. Taggett enough and then Mr. Swaby. I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to state on the no, not to call you out. We just usually put it in the backup for our board.
I agree with Mr. Goodenough about the multi-use pass. I have some family members that are disabled, so that just resonates with me.
Thank you.
All right, so that is the end of our action items, and the next items are for information, and Nathan George will go over the 2050 long range transportation plan goals and objectives.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all again. So Nathan George, I'm the Long Range Transportation Plan Coordinator, here to talk with you again about our Long Range Transportation Plan Vision 2050. We're very excited to be well underway in our process. You can see a little bit of our branding starting to show up in our materials. We're here today to talk about goals and objectives, which is the first major milestone in this process of our 4 major milestones. So goals and objectives, working towards an adopted plan, excuse me, at the end of next year. And this is going to be a high level presentation. We're not going to get too in the weeds. So the document that's in your backup, I'll talk to it at a high level, but we're certainly happy to discuss a little bit more in question and answer. So why are we talking about goals and objectives? We are required to. The federal legislation outlines that we need to have a performance-based approach. So we're not just saying, hey, we guess this is going to solve all of our transportation problems. We actually need to apply some principles to that. So that's been incorporated into the bipartisan infrastructure law, and we have to follow that. It's also an opportunity for us to demonstrate consistency between our plan and the other plans that guide where transportation dollars flow to in this region. So part of that is making sure that we're in line with the federal guidelines, what they call their planning factors. And then there's also the Florida Transportation Plan, or FTP, that you may hear about when we talk about those FDOT objectives for the state. TPA's goals are pretty well established. It's part of our vision statement. I mentioned this when we did the kickoff, but just to reiterate our vision statement, a safe, efficient, connected, multimodal transportation system. Those 5 words make up our goals: safe, efficient, connected, multimodal. And then we've added resilient in the 2045 plan. That was more of a term of maintaining and ensuring we are keeping our infrastructure in good condition. We're honing that word to resilient to sort of address some of the climate adaptation considerations. So we're not just maintaining something if it may be impacted by, say, severe storms and floods and storm surge. So having a more holistic and forward-thinking approach, we feel, is a much better word to use for that goal. For this presentation, I felt it was appropriate to establish a hierarchy. One of the challenges when you look a lot at goals and objectives is a lot of times it's, we fall back into terms of like, what's a number that we want to work towards, like a target. And that's really a challenge to make sure that as we're thinking about all the words that go into goals and objectives, we're not just relying on targets. So I wanted a hierarchy. So I gave this hierarchy to help establish how we're going to weigh all of these terms and what they mean. So our goal, each of those 5 goals, is a desired outcome that we have for this region. An objective should be, what are we doing to help accomplish that goal? And then we're using this term strategy. You may hear tactics or strategy used interchangeably, but a strategy is how we're actually going to work towards that objective in support of the goal. Measures is something that we're not really going to get into too much today, but we do have some performance measure ideas included in this document. That's how we evaluate progress. So we have this data that helps us measure, and then we establish targets so we can start to establish a trend line and review, are we making any progress towards that goal, or are we going in the wrong direction? So that helps us establish trends. So I'm not going to go through the long list of goals and objectives that we've shared with you, but we'll give you a highlight. So our goal area here is multimodal in this example. So just to refresh or reinforce. So we're going to look at what are we doing and how are we doing it? So our objective, what are we doing? We're developing a transportation system that improves regional accessibility and mobility. So that is how we're going to measure our objective. And then what are we doing about it? I'm going to say bullet number 2, we're going to identify and prioritize projects that increase commuter mode split. So as we're looking at each one of these goals, objectives, and strategies, we're measuring it against those terms in this framework. As I said, this is a very brief presentation. So that's as far as we're going to get into the weeds on the actual document. We're seeking your feedback. We've presented to the 2 committees yesterday, and we're here today to solicit your input on these draft goals and objectives so we can start to massage the language. We heard yesterday a few terms that maybe a word here or there that was that could be changed to help reinforce goals, or maybe we need to work on some language to help solidify and make it a little more clear so it's not as ambiguous. So that's some of the feedback we heard yesterday. We'd love to hear your feedback. But I want to reassure you that today is not the only opportunity you have to provide feedback and input. My contact information's on the screen. So Nathan George, my phone number and email, feel free to reach out if you'd like to provide input or schedule a meeting to discuss any questions you may have. Certainly, we would prefer to receive written feedback so we can incorporate that into our documentation as we revise this. It will be a document that requires approval, and certainly as early as we can get folks' input, the more likely we can incorporate that input as we work to document a final set of goals and objectives for this plan. We also highlighted for everybody, we will be holding a performance measures and targets workshop in August 17th from 9 to 11. It will be hosted here. Details for that just went on the website yesterday. And that was in response to our federal targets that were set several months ago. A lot of folks wanted to get more details, so we'll be having Federal Highways and FDOT come in and talk about target setting and performance measures from their perspectives, and then we'll have a section of the workshop that will focus on goals, objectives, and measures for the LRTP. That concludes my remarks. Do want to highlight that in your meeting packet is this 11-page document of all the goals, objectives, and some backup materials that will go into the final report. It's 1 page per goal area, so there are 5 pages that are relevant to the discussion today. And I'll turn it over to you.
Are there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks. See Mr. Guyton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on a couple of general questions regarding the program. You mentioned multimodal, which piqued my interest in part because there's a multimodal transportation chapter that I am the president of here in Palm Beach County. It's a nationwide organization. It's called the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, and we have chapters throughout the country. We have one in Toronto and one in Hawaii, and we deal with the local multimodal issues. And I even served on the MPO when I was on the city council, but I didn't see much about airports and ports, water, the multimodal, the air, the sea, the buses, the trains. So are we moving in that direction? And maybe we do have programs that address those modals I'm just not aware of. So enlighten me.
Okay, that's a great question. So multimodal, a lot of times when we use that term, we think walk, bike, those sorts of other modes than a car. In the state of Florida, multimodal is incorporated into the strategic intermodal system. So they have a lot of guidance incorporated in there because, you know, the funding programs are directed to airports, seaports. Those are specific areas in the Florida Transportation Plan goals that, you know, we need to work on improving our our standing from a global positioning perspective. So it's like how well is our economy going to bear on the global scale? So that's where intermodal from a freight and, air and seaport specifically, and also rail, frankly, and is included in there as well. That's a very integrated process, I would say, in the state of Florida. It's probably not as specifically spelled out in the goals and objectives, but it's certainly something that, as we're considering how our goals and objectives align with the state's goals and objectives, it's, I would say, incredibly integrated compared to other places that I've worked.
Okay. My other question is to those who know me know that I guess some consider me a political junkie. And I know there's a comment you made about the bipartisan infrastructure program. How much did we apply for in the county here? And has the process, is it ongoing? Have there been any decisions made? Or have we applied to those new funds that were made available?
Yeah, I would have to do some research to know the answer to that question. I know the county secured a Safe Roads for All, and several communities did as well. So like to develop safety action plans, that was a discretionary grant program that we presented a couple months ago, some of the awardees in the county. But I'm sure they're.
You can get back to me.
Andrew, you want to offer some thoughts?
Hello again. We have a tracker of it. Nathan mentioned the Vision Zero action plan grants with a few of our communities, Green Acres, Wellington, Boca Raton, and Palm Beach County. And it looks like West Palm Beach as well, all were awarded. And then the larger one recently was related to the SFRT Rail Vehicle Replacement Program. So that's another one that was new, and that was $71 million to replace 1/3 of their fleet. Those are the only ones. There's a few other ones that are still out there pending, but those are the ones that have been awarded that people have applied to.
I was just curious if we were trying to maximize the opportunities that have presented itself regarding those infrastructure funds that are available.
Yes, there is some. I think one of our struggles sometimes is as a metropolitan planning organization is that local match. So it takes a lot of coordination with partner agencies if they're going to be the ones to lead it or not, right? There's been a lot of success in Miami and Broward because they do have like a local match that they've been able to go after. So like some of those larger transit related ones, they've been able to capture that we haven't been able to get there yet. So,
okay, thank you.
Jean.
Yes, one of your first slides really hit me about accommodating elderly and people with disabilities. And that is, I live in Delray. And if you are in the corner of Linton and Federal Highway and you wanted to cross any way, I don't care if you're a marathon runner, it is a scary proposition to get across any of the roads. There's no waiting area in the middle. If you were older, you wouldn't be able to make it all the way across in one signal. And then the other thing is there's all these right turn on reds, which is supposed to stop, but they don't stop. They just go quickly. And I just know so many people who've been hit by what, right? My son's been hit twice on his bike. He was fine both times. He jumped on the hood, but for the right turn on red. So one of the things, and we're talking about widening Atlantic Avenue, I'd like to see incorporated in all road projects where the road right of way is greater than a certain width. Once you get up to 4 lanes, to have like a landing spot in the middle where people would feel safe. So they could get halfway across, stop and wait, and then the next signal. And the other thing is I'd like all the crosswalk signals to be tied to a no right turn on red. That would be a large thing. And so you push the button and it would come up, no right turn on red, and then do ticket enforcement. So if people are trying to step into the crosswalk, they can. Because I've watched people wait for 3 or 4 lights to try for somebody to recognize that they're there and not make the right turn in red and hit them.
Yeah, I would say goals and objectives are really here to, set those high bars to establish a vision, if you will. It's like we want to provide a safer and more accommodating infrastructure in our community, in our county. So certainly any ways that we can incorporate language that strengthens our, in your case, you're referring mostly to safety. So any of the language, if you see that there are opportunities for us to strengthen safety, that's certainly something that we would want to do. I want to give a nod to the comments that Ted was making about the side paths and mixing of users. You know, as we're talking about becoming a more walk and bike friendly community, part of that is establishing a vision that we're going to not just design to a minimum standard. That's something that barely accommodates those users. And sometimes that means making very difficult choices about how space is allocated between different modes. And it's a very difficult conversation when you think about the freight conversation we were just having, that there's only so much space and we have to figure out how to allocate it appropriately and operate the signals so they're safer. And those are conversations we're having with the county about how they operate their signals. So yeah, these are all very important points that as we can incorporate language that is very solid in our goals and objectives, it will help us when we look at projects to say, you know, these are our priorities and this is our highest priority, and help to establish you know, how we're going to weigh the benefits of any project that comes in through this LRTP process.
Yep, and it all ties back to the live local legislation that's going on right now, where you're going to see a lot more high density, a lot more infill. And then we're seeing the developers asking for 100 parking space reduction on some of the projects. So, I mean, I'm just thinking like Linton and Federal, I go back to that, there's a lot of residential. And if you were older and you had to give up your car, you could literally walk to the doctors and the gym and the grocery store and the beach and everywhere you needed to go. But if you can't cross the road, you get very isolated. So, and I do think Ted's point is a good point. I walk by the Boca Library and it's a 12-foot multi-purpose path and it's mostly walkers, but the bicyclists will come by like at 20 miles an hour and really startle people on the path. It's really incompatible. Slow bikes are one thing, but racing bikes are another.
Okay. Bruce?
One more comment regarding the local match. That has been an issue for many years with many of the governmental agencies. But one of the things that I've discovered that if one applies and is identified for funds, and then the local match becomes an issue, sometimes the policymakers start rearranging things because now they see some funds there and they see that it's going to be a tangible project. So I'm suggesting that maybe behind the scenes, you might want to talk to some of the TPA representatives to see if that's something that they want to pursue. And then if we are awarded something, the discussion can be had with even the county side before. My point is, it may be beneficial to apply and be identified in the local funds there. And you may be surprised how a local match is developed.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I'm going to lean on some discussion that I've seen about bipartisan infrastructure law, discretionary grant programs. But we're getting ready to start the process of a call for projects with all of our communities so folks can share ideas, share the projects that they're bringing forward. My hope is that we're going to see a lot of ideas that are so in their infancy that, you know, we're not at a point that they could be incorporated into a long range plan because they don't have the support, like the background information to, you know, to allow them to receive funding, public support, things like that. When projects get to a point where they can be funded, where they're ready to receive funding, and if there's good alignment with factors that the federal government has outlined in bill, things like equity emphasis or providing extreme safety enhancements, things like that, they have included in some of the programs up to a 100% funding allocation. So you don't have to even have a local match, which is a big change. A lot of it's tied to equity emphasis areas, communities that have been historically, the facilities, the transportation that goes through those communities has become a barrier. So a lot of times it's more focused on eliminating the barrier that transportation represents. And then they'll fund 100% of those improvements. But certainly, resounding, hearing what you're saying. And the goal of that call for projects is hopefully to start establishing a much more robust understanding of ideas for this region, so we can start to generate the support that turns them into projects and ultimately gets them funded.
Yeah, so, and to sum my comments up, I would suggest do not apply. Let me rephrase that. Don't be reluctant to apply if the local match is not identified right now. That's something that can be worked out, because once people see that there is other funds, there are other funds, I'm sorry, they seem to take an interest and start looking for ways to actually get that local match so that the project can move forward. So that's something you might want to consider.
Okay. Thanks. If there is Mr. Goodenough, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to the people who have recognized the lack of support that I have for shared use paths. And you were talking about Linden and Federal. I live off of Okeechobee, way out west towards Royal Palm. And I think, I don't know, I've never seen it. It's probably 8 lanes that I would have to cross. There is a place in the middle, and I'm really good at mobility and orientation and figuring out the traffic pattern and stuff. I would never try and cross the street here. I think the speed limit's 50, but people think it's 70. And it's just, I would never do it. And 25% of all Americans, United States, have a disability. It's the largest minority in the country, and the only minority that you don't have to be born into. You can try and cross that street, get hit, and you could be using a wheelchair. And in the same way, if we put bicycles and pedestrians in the same place, we're just moving where the accidents are going to happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Goodenough. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think your comments on shared use path isn't going on deaf ears. I just, at this point, need to, appreciate your comments, but I don't know what the solutions are other than separating users and creating, wider paths or, and maybe that's something, a task that we need to be looking at for others, but I do appreciate your comments.
Well, definitely looking at the, long term, I think that that's something that we can be looking at, because our goal is less vehicles on the road. And if we are going to plan out for the next 50 years, then let's plan out so that we are encouraging people to be on a walking path or a bicycle path. And I don't know how much extra space it would take, but in many of the projects that we've looked at over the last 3.5 years that I've been on board here, it really isn't much more than a couple of feet. And I know that can make a negative effect, especially on drainage, but it's, it's just taking into account future safety.
Yeah, if I could, I'll just offer a nod to our complete streets design guidelines and a term that came up yesterday as we were discussing these topics, modal hierarchy. So, these are some issues that, at least through the complete streets design guidelines, the TPA is looking at and considering potential users and the user mix and how that influences design of our streets. So there are certainly considerations there. I happen to have a background, my expertise is intersection and design of bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And there are a lot of considerations around the potential user types, the density of the infrastructure and the, housing and commercial mix along the roadway, and how that informs whether we need to segregate bicycle and pedestrian users who are in those areas. Typically, separation is going to be almost necessary in environments like our downtowns, so downtown West Palm Beach, and as transit stops would come along, say, an Okeechobee corridor, if it had light rail areas that have a lot of density, they will require that sort of separation to reduce the potential for those conflicts to occur. And then we've also been talking about e-bikes and the potential for a lot of faster traffic as a result of electrification of scooters and bikes. And so these are all topics we're talking about. Certainly want to make sure that they're incorporated into this guidance to the degree possible. So please, if you have any thoughts on those, feel free to share, and we'll try and incorporate those as best we can. Thanks.
Thanks. I have a couple of comments I wanted, and one in consideration for inclusion. The first one is, where do autonomous vehicles and that whole system of autonomous vehicles, where does that lie in the goals and objectives? Because now when you start thinking about those types of vehicles and how they would then impact transportation patterns, people's use and ownership of a car, for example. I mean, if you have an autonomous vehicle, you may not need to own it. You could share it, it could just come pick you up with an app, and it can circle around the block for the next person or whatever. So I'm just wondering where that lives in these goals.
Right now, that would fall under connected primarily, because the technology that we were going to have in this, these documents are developed every 5 years.
Okay.
So for the next 5 years, what we have is largely connected technology entering the vehicle fleet. The autonomous side of the equation, there's a lot of uncertainty around, how quickly that can deploy. We're seeing a lot of issues with autonomous vehicle deployment in places like San Francisco, where there's been a lot of pushback about the vehicles not operating the way they're supposed to, Waymo. So, with all the uncertainty that's there, it's going to primarily be in the connected. There's also safe and efficient as some of the technologies get incorporated with like emergency autonomous braking. So it sort of blends across different areas. But for right now, I would say the primary focus is going to be on connected and the infrastructure investments we can make to improve, sensing and operations, things like that.
Okay. And then the second item that I have is really, these are goals for 2050. I mean, you think about how long that sounds in the future, but it's really not that long from now. But one of the things that I think is going to be imperative as part of, climate change and resiliency and moving people around, and our growth in population and critical mass to serve transit, is the inclusion of green infrastructure. And one of the major aspects that an impediment to green infrastructure is these flood control districts, because they have a beautiful green and waterfront right of way that connects destinations, neighborhoods, parks, preserve areas, and what an opportunity to use it for habitat, for recreation, for transportation, to improve our water quality, and to improve and connect those places in our neighborhood, improve our quality of life. And they are usually in the middle of neighborhoods, in the middle of cities, and they are underutilized and single use. And I would encourage, if nothing else we do today, that we think and rethink about these types of single use pieces of property. They're in FDOT's areas. They're everywhere. And they are usually like the back of a, you know, the rear of someone's property. And the potential, especially as we densify with Senate Bill 102, and especially as we need more places to get there, the inclusion and the efficiency of using these green infrastructure opportunities and using the TPA as this jumping off point so that we can get somewhere with these flood control districts is going to be imperative, because it's just a waste of space to just, you know, convey water. I mean, conveying water is great, but conveying it in such a way that it shares, you know, the resources and connects everyone is important. And I would encourage you to put that under green infrastructure, not just promote, but like connect the dots under protect critical infrastructure, as well as promoting compact, walkable, mixed use development. It needs a place in our society if we are going to be able to combat not just transportation issues, but all the bigger issues as well, you know, climate change and transit moving around and how we're going to live. Jean.
No, and I think your point is well taken. We've worked with several of the drainage districts in the past, trying to get pathways to connect parks, and the answer's been no, it's a drainage district. But my point is, if you put a 12-foot multi-purpose path on the edge, it's not impacting your ability to convey water. It's not impacting your ability to maintain the canal. And the drainage districts have been very reticent to allow any use on their pathway. And when we talk about like multimodal path, one of the things when we were doing a greenways plan, we looked at, and it would be very expensive, but on the west side of the turnpike, you can go from Boca, I think, all the way to Okeechobee on a greenway on the west side of the canal, and you'd have very few road crossings. So if you were a long distance cycler, you could go out and do a 60-mile round trip route and really not have interaction with traffic. And we need those opportunities because every mile spent on a greenway reduces health costs by $3. So, and we all know that being out in nature is the number one. It just helps with health and depression and mental illness and everything else. So, and I'm of course with parks. So.
Yeah, I don't see green infrastructure in our draft, so that's a very appreciated comment. I will say some of it, you know, as we talk about these conversations with transportation, it will require a closer look at FDOT standards if we're talking about FDOT right of way, or your local right of ways if we're talking about local roads, county, and in any of the municipalities. The challenge that typically comes up in this conversation later is who's going to pay to maintain them. So that's just something that I would pass along, that word of wisdom, if you will, for everybody to be thinking if we're going to start investing in green infrastructure, which is an incredibly valuable tool to improve our resiliency. We will have added maintenance that goes along with that, which is something we're talking about at TPA about the capital costs, but the ongoing operation and maintenance is something that needs to be factored in on the local side as well. And it's well worth making those considerations.
Yeah, and then just, you know, to follow up with that, you know, if we have these other pathway systems, you know, then there isn't as much of a crowd along the roadways. I mean, it'll become that side path that the pedestrians and bicyclists take, and then there's room for separated paths, and not just that, you know, room for habitat and you know, those types of things. So I really encourage green infrastructure. It's called green infrastructure because it encompasses it all, you know, transportation and resiliency. So anyways, I look forward to seeing that. If we have any other comments? No? Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. So thank you. And then our next item is the Vision Zero Action Plan status update that Valentina will be presenting to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on a very exciting and positive note, I will be presenting to you all the update that we have for our Vision Zero action plan for fiscal year 23. So as you all may or may not know, if you're new to the committee, the TPA adopted a Vision Zero action plan in 2019 and then updated it in 2021 to have a shared goal of eliminating our fatal and serious injuries. So in order for us to get to our goal, we have 3 key strategies or actions for this to happen. So the first one is policy actions. As you can see there, we have a couple of them that are in progress, but we have met one of them, safety changes in TPA legislation and policy positions. The TPA does actively participate in the creation of these policies with the MPOAC, Metropolitan Planning Organization Advisory Council. And also the majority of these items that are in progress will begin a scope of work for the next fiscal year 24. The next action is the funding actions. Most of them are in progress, and we have been working with the signal maintaining agencies, so Palm Beach County and the city of Boca Raton. Palm Beach County actually applied for a local initiatives grant to fund traffic and pedestrian signal improvements. So we're excited for that. And the city of Boca Raton did apply for a transportation alternatives grant to fund pedestrian and bicycle additions and improvements. Also, TPA staff is working on an interactive dashboard to display all of the TPA funded projects. So we're excited for that. And for the cultural related actions, as you can see, we've met the majority of them. We originally, when we first created our Vision Zero action plan, we set to provide reviews of fatal pedestrian and bicycle crash reports. We recently modified our process, so now we're including serious injuries as well, and we're doing a more detailed analysis to include human behavior, roadway conditions, and socioeconomic conditions into that pedestrian and bicycle crash report, as you can see there on the screen. Also, we did implement a Vision Zero media. We have an entire page on our website dedicated to Vision Zero. We created a Vision Zero toolkit and a public education campaign. For example, the pledge cards that you've all seen. We also hosted, every year we host our Vision Zero workshop. We just had ours April 28th, and I think some of you got the opportunity to join. And we also hosted a series of Vision Zero safety events. So I'll show you all here. For fiscal year 23. So on the top there, we did the helmet fitting training for the Vision Zero Advisory Committee. Last year in 2022, we were part of the FDOT's Mobility Week for Florida Bicycle Month. We hosted our annual bike ride. We were also last year we were part of the Walk to School Day. So many activities. So that's all I have for you today. Any questions?
Do we have any public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, so then, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Bruce.
I just want to make sure I put Valentine in touch with the city of Riviera Beach. I think that they signed on to the multi.
Yes, so I actually just received an email from the city this morning, and they let me know that they'll be sending me the signed letter of support for the US Bicycle Route 1 proposed realignment. So thank you, Bruce, for that. Thank you.
How about Mr. Guyton getting someone on this board from the city of Riviera Beach? I think their input would be valuable.
Okay.
Okay. What I think that was it for us. We do have administrative items and those are 4A through 4E, which are informational items. They do not have staff presentation unless a committee member wants to have them reviewed. Anybody want to talk about anything? No? Okay. Any public items on the information? Any public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So our next VSAC meeting is July 6th after the holiday. So please make sure you note if you're going to be here or not, so we can see if we have quorum. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, staff.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Bye all. Be safe.